welcome back. So what we're looking at today is 9.1 and 9.2, equivalent and simplified fractions. So let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so like I said, we're looking at equivalent and simplified fractions. So how can you find equivalent fractions? So fractions that have different numerators and denominators, but the same amount are what's known as equivalent fractions. Equivalent is your key word for this lesson. So, for example, 2/3, 4/6, 6/9, 8/12. These are all representing the 2/3 of something, because we can simplify 4/6 down to 2/3. We can simplify 6/9 down to 2/3. We can simplify 8/12 down to 2/3. So one way, you can multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same non-zero number. So here we have 10/15, and I'm going to write it so it looks more like our typical fraction. So there's 10/15. We want to find an equivalent fraction. So we can multiply these both by 2. That'll give us 20 over 30. We could multiply it by 3, each of them. That'd give us 30 over 45. We can multiply them both by 10. That would give us 100 over 150. All of those are equivalent fractions, and there's so many more because we can multiply by any number so long as it's not 0. And obviously we don't really want to multiply by 1 because that's just going to get us the exact same thing we started with. We want to make sure it's not 0 because that just eliminates everything, and not 1 because, well, then it's just the same exact fraction, which is equivalent, but I like to see that you can do some that are a little more complicated. All right, another way is you can divide the numerator and denominator by the same non-zero number if they can both be divided evenly. So this won't work for all cases. This will only work in some cases. So looking at this one here, we have 10/15. Now 10 and 15 are both divisible by 5. So we can divide them each by 5. So we're going to get 2 over 3, represents 2/3. Now, if we would have had the fraction 10/13, could we use this method to take and simplify, or to take and find an equivalent fraction? No, we can't. So this method won't always work for every fraction that you have. It'll only work on the ones that can both be divided by the exact same number. So here we have 3/12. We want to name 2 equivalent fractions to 3/12. Well, one would be to divide both of these by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Another way would be to multiply them, and I'm going to multiply them by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 12 times 2 is 24. So 1/4, 6/24, and 3/12 are all equivalent fractions. All right, here we have 6/12. So this one, it'll work to divide. Now, there's different things we could divide by here. We could divide by 2, we could divide by 3, we could divide by 6, all of which would work because both 6 and 12 are divisible by all of those numbers in common. I'm going to take it all the way down. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. I'm also going to show you just taking it down by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So this one up here is what's known as simplest form. So we can't take 1/2 any further than what it is. So we will be getting into doing simplest form, but on the equivalent fractions ones, you don't have to take it all the way to simplest form. You could have an answer like this. And as always, you can take and multiply. Times 2 times 2. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. All right, 35/56. So a lot bigger of a number, but are they both divisible by the same thing? Yeah, they are. 7 goes into both of these evenly. So we can divide both of them by 7. 35 divided by 7 is 5. 56 divided by 7 is 8. So this would be simplest form again. We can't take it any further. Now we can take 35 over 56 and multiply them both by 10 or any other number. Equivalent fractions are probably one of the easier things. It just involves coming up with numbers to multiply by, and you multiply the same number to both top and bottom because you don't have to divide, because as I've said, division won't always work to find an equivalent fraction. When it's already in simplest form, it won't work. All right, here we have 32 over 40. Do they have a number in common? Yes, they're both divisible by 8. 32 divided by 8 is 4. 40 divided by 8 is 5. So this is once again simplest form. So then 32 times 2, 40 times 2, 32 times 2 is 64. 40 times 2 is 80. So, like I said, just taking and finding other fractions that represent the same amount. So both 32 40ths and 64 80ths represent 4/5 of a whole. All right, how can you write a fraction in simplest form? So I've been mentioning this to get you guys prepared for this part of the lesson. So stained glass window has 20 panes. Out of 20 sections, 12 are yellow. So 12 20ths of the panes are yellow. We can also say 3/5 are yellow. So 12 20ths reduces down to simplest form of 3/5. So a fraction is in simplest form when its numerator and denominator have no common factor other than 1. To write 12 and 20 in simplest form, find a common factor of the numerator and the denominator. Since 12 and 20 are even numbers, they have 2 as a factor. Divide both 12 and 20 by 2. So we divide 12 by 2, we get 6. We divide 20 by 2, we get 10. So we're at 6/10. But 6/10 is still even. So that means we have to divide by 2 again. So when you have even numbers, you can just start by dividing by 2. Sometimes you might not know what their common factor, what the common factor is between them. So starting by dividing by 2 is always a very good place to start when they're even. It only works when they're even that you can start by dividing by 2. And then just keep dividing until you can't divide by 2 anymore. And that typically, not always, but typically, that leaves you with your simplest form. So in this case, we divide by 2 again. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So we have 3/5. 3/5 can't be reduced past 3/5. So 3 and 5 have no common factor other than 1. So you know that 3/5 is in simplest form. So here we have 16 30-seconds. So I'll do their method. Now right off the bat, you may be able to recognize a larger value than 2 that they're both divisible by. If you do, by all means, divide what you know it is right away. So if you don't, then start with dividing by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 32 divided by 2 is 16. They're still even. Divide by 2 again. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Still even. Divide again. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Still even. Divide again. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 1/2 is simplest form. Now, if right off the bat you were thinking, oh, well, 8 can go into both 16 and 32, so you could have started by dividing by 8. 16 divided by 8 is 2. 32 divided by 8 is 4. What you would have found is that you hadn't got it to simplest form yet, that there was something larger that you could have divided by. That's okay. Go from here and keep simplifying. Divide them both by 2 to find that it's 1/2. So You can use whatever number you recognize that divides into both of them, but key thing, it has to divide into both of them. All right, here we have 10/14. They're both evens, so we can divide by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 14 divided by 2 is 7. There's our simplest form. We can't take it any further. So some of these are going to be real easy. We're just going to have to divide once. Others, we may have to divide more than once to figure out what simplest form is if we don't recognize that common factor right off the bat. Here we have 33/77. Now right off the bat, you may be thinking, there's nothing they have in common. But there is. They're both divisible by 11. So 3/7, which is simplest form. So sometimes, especially on those that aren't even, you have to be super, super careful because it can be real easy to think that, oh, it's already in simplest form. So you have to think through your math facts. All right, 16/20. Well, we know they're both even. We also know they're both divisible by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. There's our simplest form. So like I said, some of these will appear easier than others. Also remember, anytime both your numbers end in 0, you're either going to divide by, well, if they end in 0, you're going to divide by 10. So that's always a good place to start when your number ends with a 0. Because we know those numbers are typically always divisible by 10. So 30 divided by 10 is 3. 40 divided by 10 is 4. There's our simplest form. And when numbers both end in 5 or 5 and 0, depending on the case, you know it's divisible by 5. So like this one, we've got 0, we've got 5. We know 5 can go into both of them. So that's a good place to start. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3.